and I walk to the house and I go in and I shut everything off like nobody's home. Somehow he knew I was there, and he broke in and proceeded to start choking me. And I didn't have a phone, I didn't have any communication because he had actually destroyed it earlier that night. And so, like, threw it up against a concrete pillar. And so I really thought my life was going to be taken that night. Like, I surrendered to it.
Crystal, thank you so much for joining me. I know that you are an energy healer and you're a trauma release therapist, and I'm going to assume that it's something also to do with releasing the trauma out of your body. So I'd love to hear more about that. But before we start, if you could just share a little bit about your background and what led you to doing what you're doing right now.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think a lot of us, and I'll share my unique individual story, are awakened through more traumatic situations, right? Tragic situations, things that really shake up, the life that we're living unconsciously. And so that we wake up kind of thing. And for me, I was unconscious until probably about my early 30s. Really not paying attention to what was healthy for me in regards to emotional well-being and mental well-being. I definitely was someone who needed to control my environment, highly empathic, but I didn't know any of this. Like, I had no idea that the reason I had such walls up, the reason that I attracted such toxic humans into my life is because of how empathic I am and how that like vibrates outwardly. And so I, ended up getting into an abusive relationship and, through my adult years, and I was in a emotional, mental, verbal, physical, abusive relationship for 10 years. And I just tolerated it. I mean, I even, justified it and made excuses for it. And my ego was so strong that nobody could tell me differently. And I just protected myself as much as I could, right? By, really becoming successful and building a reputation in the freight industry. So being a cutthroat salesperson, being a top sales rep, frequenting president's clubs and all the things, bringing my ex-husband with me and him acting out at like executive, engagements and things like that. So really wild. And the episodes that he would have, mainly were behind closed doors. But every once in a while he would show up and, and people wouldn't do anything about it. Like his family, like I was like, something needs to give here. Like he is crazy. He gets crazy. He gets demonic. And they're like, yeah, it's just who he is. And I'm like, what the world is happening? It was the weirdest reality. And so I was very confused, I guess. So I went on like antidepressants and like, what was missing, what was going on. Like I didn't grasp or comprehend that this was abuse at the level that it was actually happening at. Like I was minimizing the relevancy of abuse that I was experiencing. And so as everything just continued to unfold, something told me to start weaning myself off of my antidepressants. So it was a Zoloft. And I had been on them for probably about 2 years, and I started weaning myself off of them. And when I did that, all hell broke loose. And there was an evening that was the turning event where I had a near-death experience because he tried to take my life. And it was very scary. It was the most interesting experience, in the sense of he acted out in front of like family members and friends, and so they really saw the true human that he was. And I was like, okay, I'm no longer dealing with this anymore. I made a decision. And so I left the house that night instead of staying like I normally would. I went to a friend's house, and somehow he knew where I went. And nobody was home. The garage door was open, but nobody was home. So if you imagine, I pull up to this house, it's dark out, the garage door's open, lights on, nobody's home. So I go in, I park my car down the street, and I walk to the house, and I go in and I shut everything off, like nobody's home. Somehow he knew I was there, and he broke in and proceeded to start choking me. And I didn't have a phone, I didn't have any communication, because he had actually destroyed it earlier that night. And so, like, threw it up against a concrete pillar. And so, so I really thought my life was going to be taken that night. Like, I surrendered to it. And it felt okay. It really did. And that was probably the first time that I ever felt myself without, that ego, that need for protection, that know-it-all. And when that happened and I was losing air to my brain, to my body, I surrendered to it. And I don't think I was able to say it because he was choking me. I had bruises all over my neck. I think it was just like divine intervention, because I remember saying, or at least thinking, think about what you're doing. I said his name and I said, think about what you're doing. And when that happened, he got off of me. Don't ask me why. He did not go he didn't finish what he started. And everything changed. My reality completely shifted. My awareness, my emotions, and my feelings got turned on. And my life got turned upside down. And every mutual person that we were involved with, the ties were severed overnight.
Wow.
So I literally was like living a different reality, but still remembering my old life. It was really weird. And that was my awakening. So, what I say to that is like my intuitive gifts weren't activated. So it was more of me being able to feel that I'm human. I have these emotions and these feelings. What do I do with them? Because I wasn't paying attention to them. I wasn't giving them any attention or intention because my ego was so prominent. And so that's where everything started. I left him. I jumped right into another relationship because I was so emotionally codependent. It ended up being a toxic relationship as well, about 3 years of being with someone right out of my marriage. But she left me, so it was with a woman. And when she left me, that's when I experienced loss for the first time. And not because it was the person that I lost. I wasn't able to be emotionally codependent anymore.
Yeah.
So I really had to look at the inner understanding of myself, not just my emotions, not just my feelings, but the patterns, the depth of what I was being awakened to. And so then I found my mentors because I was dabbling in the world of energy at that time and manifesting and, all the things that you kind of get in, it starts poking you, right? It's like, hey, this is possible. This is possible. This is possible. And so I found my mentors online, did a course. Within 2 months, they were doing a retreat. I went to the retreat. And that's where my intuitive gifts were activated. I had no idea what that meant specifically. All I knew is that my mentors had a better idea than I did. And so because of my emotional codependency, I then became emotionally codependent on them because I was moving through the awakening of my intuitive gifts. So I listened to your, story that you open up with for the Spiritual Warrior podcast. And it's so very true. Like if you don't release the patterns of how you choose to use your energy, it's just going to keep creating the same energetic signature, and it's just going to look different.
Yeah.
And so that's what was happening. So I stepped out of relationships, but then I got into coaching trauma. Like it came through as coaching trauma. And so almost like cult energy, because it became, it really, they took me under their wing, and I was traveling the world, co-facilitating workshops, going to galas. I was hanging out with, in multi-million-dollar homes with, the echelon of self-development, people, and all of it. It was all very inauthentic. So I was shown this world and was like, hey, do you want to be a part of this world, Crystal? And I was, I couldn't. It wasn't authentic for me. So that was severed, and it was severed very abruptly. And what I thought was going to be, a jumping off platform for, my spiritual journey and getting out of the freight industry and moving from that identity, ended up being shattered overnight. So it sent me into a very deep healing to where if I hadn't had my near-death experience, I probably would have went into a psychosis. It was that deep of a healing. And I just had to, I was just so sensitive and my intuition had been gaslighted. I had lost all trust in myself. I didn't trust anything. I didn't even trust a crystal or a deck card, like an oracle card deck, or I didn't trust anything. So for about 3 years, I was pretty much isolated, and I have about 40 spiral notebooks of conversations with Source, so that I could be guided through this deeper healing. So a very tumultuous path, very much a roller coaster. And so I believe that there's another way to walk through your awakening. It doesn't have to consist of such intensity, right? So I was shown a path of embodiment, but I didn't even know that's what I was being shown. Like, Source doesn't say, "Hey, this is what you're doing. You're gonna bring the wisdom of embodiment through." It's literally training me, and I'm just having to trust its training. I have no idea what I'm being trained for. And so as I reemerged and learned, boundaries and what I call energetic ethics, and just a more embodied connection to Source. So not just there's a difference between, at least from my perspective and what I feel in my body, there's a difference between just channeling information and actually having an embodied connection to Source. It's like it brings spirit into the body. And so I was then guided to learn how to embody an embodied path. So I was introduced to breathwork and things of that nature. Breathwork has been incredible, absolutely incredible, to be able to actually ground this wisdom into my body, into the earth. Because when we are bestowed very strong wisdom, we have to learn how to let that land and move through and be expressed. And that consists of, retraining our nervous system, because our awakening can be even more traumatizing than life itself. And so all of this has been shown to me over the better part of a decade. And now there's no gap between the metaphysical and the physical world for me. Like, it is very, the practical and metaphysical, like that's my mission, is to close the gap with that. So I have really been able to ground this wisdom so that it can really be digestible. And as it evolves and unfolds, for it to be time to really take hold and for people to see the value in it, I hold the vision.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, you've been through a lot.
I have.
You know what it almost sounds like when you give birth and the contractions get closer and closer. It's like you think, just when you think you've got it, it's just too much all at once.
Yes. Yeah, because, that's like, nobody taught me how to integrate experiences. And then all of a sudden, I'm having these cosmic, massive, earth-shattering experiences, and I didn't even know how to integrate life.
They don't know. They've never learned it themselves. We all sitting learning all of this stuff all of a sudden. Yeah. And that's the problem. That's not the stuff they teach you at school. which they should do.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's just go back. So
Yeah.
you were on Zoloft. You know what I find interesting is I was coaching some of my students, and every one of them had been on antidepressants. And I said to them, that since when? And some from the age of 16 already. It's almost like the medical fraternity thinks this is just a way to handle emotions. Everyone gets it. Take this pill. And it's become so normalized. And I've discovered more than 50% of them were on antidepressants. How are we going to deal with our emotions when we don't have any?
Yep.
I wonder if
Yep.
that's actually a ploy to do
Oh,
that.
absolutely. And it has a lot to do with, so this, I love that you bring this up because I have this theory and I'm not gonna like, and I'll just share it. Like, I don't think necessarily like we're ready for it per se, but it's what we're moving towards. But like antidepressants and medication that we become dependent on. So like I believe medication is wonderful for acute situations and things of that nature, but our body is this magnificent self-healing specimen. And we do not give it the permission to do so because we've been so highly influenced that we can just become dependent upon this drug or that drug or this drug or that drug. And antidepressants are really kind of in their own bucket of medication in the sense of the intention of why we, why we have them, why we take them. And my theory is that like those who are highly empathic, those who are highly psychic and don't know what to do with the awareness of it are, being psychically attacked and things like that. Those are the people that are like, we don't know what to do with them. Like doctors don't know what to do with them because they don't understand it. And the number one thing that will support us in being able to understand how to work with the emotions, how to hold space for emotions, how to hold space for someone to actually walk their own journey instead of trying to influence it or impose it or parent it or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Safety in the body.
Yeah.
And
that just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah. This is the core message that I have. So like the art of embodiment is, I've been shown you walk through like 4 gateways when you're really learning embodiment and what it means for you. Like generally speaking, embodiment is walking your journey intuitively and emotionally. And everybody's always like, don't listen to your emotions, set your emotions aside, emotions can, overtake, look at it logically, like all this blah, 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 blah. Well, that is the unbalance that we have here. We do not know how to feel safe in our bodies. So we do not know how to let an electrical current of thought or emotion move through us without identifying with it, without attaching a memory to it, without attaching a trauma to it, whatever it might be. We don't know how to do it. And because we're electromagnetic beings, somebody else's emotion, somebody else's intention, somebody else's thought can provoke us. Because we don't have those boundaries and we don't know energetic ethics. And so the doctor has no idea how to hold space for a very charged emotion that's moving through someone, or for a consistent pattern of, bipolar and all these things, different medical, I don't want to call them illnesses, but like disorders, different mental disorders. So my theory is that some of us are overly empathic, some of us are overly psychic. And so they are demonstrating the extreme of what it is to really metaphysically be affected.
Yeah.
But we haven't connected that yet.
I think you're onto something for sure. And it's probably the same with kids that are being put on Ritalin and all these ADHD drugs, because they are seeing things that we're not designed to sit as a child behind a desk and sit quietly for 6 hours a day. That's not normal. That's not healthy.
Well, it isn't, and they're not learning how to feel safe in their bodies. Like,
Mhm.
like we can, that's the simplicity of this. If we as humans can let a charged emotion move through us and not have the intention, because we have a sovereign boundary of not letting it affect other people, and be able to hold space for ourselves.
Mm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to speak more about that, but I want to just go back a bit. So I've made a note.
Yeah, please
You
do.
said earlier, like nobody did anything. So just going back to that kind of abusive behavior, I mean, my favorite saying is evil flourishes when good men do nothing. And I think people always say, no, he didn't mean it that way. And, he's not really like that. And because they don't see the side that you see, they only see the outward persona that's out in the world. And then they believe it because they're charming and friendly and all of these things. But look at what happened in the world when people got away with things and everybody just leaves it. Nobody holds them accountable because it's too much work, because they don't want to get involved. And so eventually it gets up to us to actually say, look, I've had enough. Let's stop. They need to start being accountable. Just like we are accountable, they need to be accountable. And then you said demonic. And I from my own experience, I see that most narcissists, in fact, 99% of them that I've encountered, are involved in some kind of black magic, dark arts, devil worshipping something. Like, I'm sure that is part of it. And it may not even be them themselves that are like that, but maybe they are being like open, like you're open to spirit, they're open to that kind of energy, and that's what's actually sucking you dry, and that's what you want to protect yourself against. And people are not aware. And so then it becomes your job. If they're not going to do anything, then you have to. It's a very hard awakening, but it is. That realization that if no one's going to do something about it, maybe it's just going to have to be me, or speaking out.
Yeah. Yeah, if I could speak to that for a moment.
Yeah.
So, what has been shown to me, and why I have no discord towards the journey that I've walked, like I actually have immense gratitude for it, is because we can only change ourselves, right? We have free will, okay? And we are destined to evolve. And so, with that being said, there is a lot of misconception that is my job to really bring awareness to, and it can be quite disruptive to human conditioning, okay? Because anytime that we are attracting a experience that has whatever you perceive as demonic, evil, those type of things, it's because there is a part of us that is attached to that energetic signature.
Yeah.
And so we work with that part of us so that we can heal it, so that we can, enlighten it, so that it can no longer have power over us. And from my perspective, that's the journey. Like that's the journey of self-discovery. And so
Absolutely.
like I'm a firm believer that we live in a world of duality, but we live in a world of duality so that we can use contrast to learn about ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't live in a world of duality so we can say this is light and this is dark. We live in a duality so we can say, oh, this feels light. Oh, this feels dark. And we can actually experience it free of judgment and then make a choice.
Yeah.
And so this is moving beyond duality. Because
Yes, absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, everything is here, everything is one. So
It's integrating the two and
yes,
acknowledging that they both have a place and they both exist, and one is not more important than the other or better than the other necessarily or anything. It's only your perception.
I love that.
Yeah. No, I get it totally. But having said that, you still need to get to a point where you separate yourself from that to say what is mine and what is theirs.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not going to carry other people's stuff because I can't. I can't do anything with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's theirs. And that's again back to holding space. Okay, so going back, you were saying the codependency, because I see that's coming up a lot everywhere. And people are starting to realize that they have it. And I try and teach people how to shift from stop worrying about what other people think of you, or needing a middleman to feel loved. You don't need to love somebody else so that they can vicariously love you. You could just love you. You don't need that other person. And yet I think maybe it comes from childhood where we need to feel that. But what was interesting, like when you said that loss, because I had it too. I left my husband, 17 years we were married. I was so happy. I felt amazing. I thought this is like, I will never mourn this man because I went through so much. But then I had a relationship after that, and that loss was intense. Like it was so bad. I was so down, and I was shocked that I had it because it was just, I don't know if it was maybe an expectation thing or what that was. But yes, and I knew I was codependent, but yet I thought I'd worked through it. And it just hit me so hard. I don't know. Do you think it's like you say, you're carrying that trauma and you haven't released it out of your body and now it compounds? Or is that something different? Because I don't want to go through that again. Like never.
No, I hear
That was
you.
hectic.
Yeah, I hear you. And so what's coming through is, and again, these are my conversations with Source. So as Source downloaded this information, I was literally able to imprint it upon my subconscious. And so this is how I inform my reality from an energetic perspective, so that emotions aren't as charged. And so it supports my regulation of my nervous system and so on and so forth. So what was shown to me and how I inform my reality is the human conditioning is seated in two seeds, and everything else roots from it. And the two seeds, the two seeds are codependency and competition.
Wow.
So codependency is the seed, the feminine. Okay, it's the feminine, like darkness, because a seed, right, is in the earth, it's in the, it is what everything else grows from. And then competition is the masculine. And
that makes so much sense.
Right? And again, you won't, so use your own discernment. All of your listeners, use your own discernment, because, of course, this isn't something you'll read in a book until, of course, I write one. But this is downloaded information direct from source. And so, and then applied through a willingness of a deep devotion to walking an embodied path. So so I can sense codependency down to the seed, which is why I can so effortlessly track energy. And so codependency is it, like you're gonna experience it until the habits are created with self-love, because codependency is everywhere. It's in parents, it's in the how parents depend upon their children to emotionally fill them, right? It's in relationships of love, right, of intimacy. That's a more like that's one that people can kind of digest. The parents and the children that one is a little more sensitive to digest. Yeah. But it's if you can sense it, you can tell, oh, that's the seed of codependency, and then how it is showing up and being demonstrated through the roots of their belief system, and not their belief system of it's their belief system of self, right? It's their self-worth. It's their self-trust. It's their capacity, how much have they cultivated discernment? How much do they just use, judgment, these type of things. So codependency, it takes a witness to be able to really see codependency for what it is, and being able to release it to become an inhabit in mastery of sovereignty, because sovereignty is releasing the need for codependency.
Yeah.
But still be able to keep your heart open, to connect, to harmonize, to have compassion, right? So we're learning how to connect instead of how to attach. The mind attaches. The heart connects.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. And then the competition, how would that change? How would, because that's the masculine in women too. It's not just the males, but they are highly competitive. And I find, in the relationships that I've been in and the women that I work with, they're with competitive partners, because is it like a balancing out thing? What is that? It's almost like I need to be on top for me to feel like somebody, and you need to be at the bottom.
Yeah. So the codependency feminine and competition masculine, that was just shown to me as like the energetic signatures of, yin and yang and, everything else. And so competition shows up as envy and jealousy and, think about it from the, from the early teachings of, survival of the fittest, Darwinism, barbaric, war, like all the things. Yeah. And this is the seed of competition. And it shows up and it manifests because we have literally, generationally and ancestrally, we have been informing our DNA in this way. So we have to activate, the innate wisdom that holds the DNA, that, allows the light through. And we do that, through energy work and being able to open different energy centers to come to self-realization. So really to be able to move out of the conditioning, the seated conditioning of competition and codependency, we have to be able to be guided into self-realization of why we don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the real work.
That's where the work lies.
Yeah, and I don't think it needs to be, hey, let me show you a narcissistic relationship so that you can learn that codependency, doesn't need to happen, right? Like you can liberate yourself. I think we can become more heightened in our consciousness to see it more as like to be able to attract and perceive less intense situations, circumstances, experiences, so that we can enlighten and liberate ourselves through our journey. Because I always say this, but basically, like, our external world is our universal classroom.
Yeah.
Like we can learn from it and we can have a lot of joy in it, and we can have, a lot of fun, and we can learn grace, and patience and trust and all these spiritual skill sets and gratitude. Like you can have a gratitude, meditation or, a gratitude practice, but to embody gratitude, that's a process.
Yeah. So I had a thought, but I mean, it all ties in with what you're saying, is that empaths are born with more consciousness or sentience. Is that true? It's almost like we have more of a remembrance of who we are, which makes it difficult because we have a remembrance of love, of connection, of wanting other people to see the dysfunctional patterns. And then we find ourselves in those, in our bid to change it. But you're right. And it's difficult. I think the biggest thing with trust as well is that people, once you've been hurt, we trust too easily because we think people think like us, and they don't. They don't think like us. They don't have your best interests at heart necessarily. And so you get hurt, and then you don't trust your decisions because you think, I thought I knew this person better, and so it just goes backwards. But it's maybe learning to discern first. Mm-hmm. Like, absolutely. Is somebody, and that doesn't mean you can't trust. It's who do you trust? And what do you trust? Do you trust your gut, or do you trust? Because gut is also like a lot of people are not able to trust their gut because they're not developed enough yet. So they can trust their fear. Their gut tells them, it's a different kind of a fear response. And that's not your gut. It's like to get to a level where you're able to say, okay, now I can know what spirit is telling me versus what some person is telling me. I'm able to trust that more and more. And it's like, it is a growth process. You have to do that first. You can't just say, okay, one day I've woken up and I don't know, like, is it ever gentle? When you say, God, give me strength, and he throws a concrete block on you and says, right.
And says, here's how you know how you have strength.
Yeah. Okay.
So right, and so that goes into collectively a lot of what's coming through when you speak of that is suffering, and we have to suffer in order to awaken, and being attached to this illusion of needing to suffer in order to awaken. Yeah. In order to continue to awaken ourselves, right? And so what I have been shown and what I embody and what I apply and integrate and continue to move with, and how I move through all the uncertainty that I have in my life. And, if I have loneliness, whatever it might be, is, everything is energy. And comprehensively, everything's energy. We've been seeing this over and over. The proof is starting to come more and more. However, to embody that truth is to use the information in a way that supports the wholeness of who you are, and that includes your body. And so, if you want to get out of your pain and suffering are two very different things. Suffering is, I use the word suffrage, age-old suffering. And a lot of us are in it. A lot of us are in age-old suffering. We just inherit an understanding for suffering. And the more sensitive we are, the more suffering, we're going to experience, because we're going to experience the degree of the spectrum, right? So our sensitivity is our power, but we don't know that until we suffer through it, right? And liberate ourselves. So instead of working with what I call, this is very archaic way of using our energy, is we work with it as we learn to have like an energetic perspective. And what I mean by that is everything everything is a frequency. Everything. If you're experiencing something cold, it's a frequency in your body. If you're experiencing something, anger, it's a frequency. Every emotion is a frequency. And as you learn your emotions, you can feel frequency even greater, right? You can sense it. And as you cultivate discernment, Spirit will tell you exactly what that frequency is and how it aligns with what you're experiencing at the time. And so let's move into this perspective because you're not going to have as much, you're not going to really suffer because your mind isn't using what it knows to create the, reality. You're actually present in listening instead of understanding, because the understanding comes from activating the innate wisdom within. So it's a very different way of using information. And it's been a better part of a decade, really being able to ground in a way of being, like a structure to help teach people this way to actually use information instead of having to understand it first.
Yeah.
Because that is what creates suffering, is having to understand it first.
You're spot on, because I used to say to my clients as well, you need to heal the past. And I've got to a point where I say, I don't even think that's necessary anymore. You don't need to know if you've got a cold, where the cold came from. If you go on Google and you ask Google, why have I got a cold? It's going to tell you picked it up from somewhere, and who knows, and will that heal you? No, it's not going to do anything for you. You're asking the wrong question. And so a lot of people saying, well, I wonder where I got this trauma from. Why do I have a stomach ache? And I have to find the cause, because when I find the cause, then I can heal it. But sometimes it's just a habit, like you're talking about love habits. It's just a habit to say, I like to feel sad all the time, and my body's reacting, oh, she feels sad at this time of the day, so let's feel sad again. So okay, so let's talk about how we do the trauma release. So you release it from the body.
Yeah, so here's the thing, okay? What's really important in my containers is I am a firm believer in not going digging into the psyche, okay? So a lot of people are like, ask why, ask why, ask why. Why will be revealed, okay?
Yeah.
It's really about presencing the energy. And what I mean by presencing the energy is there's like a natural process of emotional flow. Okay. And the first one is emotional retraction. This is where, like, the body is like completely like saying, no, I don't want to feel this. Like, it's not even willing to feel something, like you contract, right? And you go straight into the mind. That's emotional retraction. If you can become aware of when you're doing that, then you can work on moving into emotional awareness. And this is where you start labeling and identifying, and you want to immediately change your emotional state. Okay?
Yeah.
Because you're like, no, I don't want that. Well, we still have to let the emotion continue to move through its flow, or else it'll get stuck. So when you get to this stage, you then start working on moving from emotional awareness. I'm sorry, not emotional awareness. So it was emotional retraction, and then emotional. Hold on. Why am I knowing? Emotional knowing. Emotional knowing is when you want to change your emotional state immediately. You're like, I don't want that. I don't want to feel that. But when we do that, we are cutting off the full natural process of the emotional flow. Okay?
Yeah.
So we want to become aware of when we're in that stage, when we're in that state, and then start working on moving into emotional awareness. Okay? And this is where you can start kind of holding space for yourself. You're like, okay, I'm feeling that. I don't need to necessarily know what I'm feeling, but I'm still not there where I can completely hold space for what energy is presencing itself right now. So the mind still kind of wants to take over, kind of thing. But you're in that in between, okay? And so when you can become aware of that, then you can start working to move into the final stage. And this is emotional intimacy. This is where you can truly be intimate with the presence of the energy that is in the body at the time. This is where you can talk to it. This is where you build a dialogue with it. This is where you use your mind's eye to really allow yourself to understand why the energy is there and be able to see the energy for what it is and not what you think it is.
Yeah.
And that is how we release.
So it's just basically not having resistance, allowing it and getting to know it, and allowing it just space to move through you so that you don't have to repress it or suppress it.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's very much about not having resistance, but we can say that, but we don't, like, we can comprehend what resistance is, but how often or have we built habits that allow us to let the emotion move through its full natural process? Because most of our habits are just at that emotional retraction or emotional knowing. And that's why they're not taking the full course. And all energy ever wants to do is express itself. And so
here's where I'm a little bit conflicted, like not conflicted, but not clear. So there's the one hand that says you allow the energy, you get to know it, you feel it, and I totally get that. And then on the other hand, it's like I had backache, really bad, and it happened from a car accident that I had when I was pregnant. But Then I learned to not pay any attention to it. And I said to my body, thank you for sharing, but I don't need that pain anymore. And then it just kind of went away. And it took about 3 weeks. And now I don't have backache anymore. Every now and then I'll feel a twinge, but nothing like what I had. And I've learned that to apply that to other areas of my life. But this is like, no, it's like a gray area. Do you just say, look, go away, I don't need you? Or do you say, okay, I welcome you, let's talk? It's like,
Yeah, no, this is a really great question, and I love it. And so, what comes through is this is where you really don't have to go digging. Okay, this is where you build a dialogue with the body, and you ask it. You say, "Are you safe enough to feel this? Are you safe enough to want to, go deeper with this? Or, is it something that we, address later?" This is where you start building a dialogue with the body.
so that would be the dialogue. So the dialogue would have been something like, don't worry, body, I've got this. It's okay.
Yeah.
You don't need to.
The dialogue
need to hold on.
Yeah, the dialogue that you chose came from spirit. It came from your intuition. It didn't come from your logic.
No.
Yeah,
It
right?
was kind of a case of, don't worry, we've got,
Yeah. So you built a dialogue with your body. And because you built that dialogue with your body, you guys got through it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like taking control and allowing the body to feel safe by saying it's okay.
Yes.
And by saying it's okay, you don't have to be in control. You don't have to hold on to whatever that thing is. And that applies to all illnesses, I guess. I mean, it's not illness is manifestation of trauma that happened.
Yeah. I mean, dis-ease in the body, ailments, things of that nature, they all have an emotional root. And remember, those emotional roots are tied to the seeds of the human conditioning. So, but here's the thing, like what you did was highly advanced for us as human beings. Like, you have to give so there's 4 gateways of embodiment. It's safety, trust, permission, and devotion. And I've been embodying this, applying it like for a decade. And you gave yourself permission to heal. But that is advanced. That's the 3rd gateway.
Okay, good.
Of embodiment. But because you're using your intuition and you're that open to yourself, you gave yourself permission. And that's the simplicity of it is what the mind resists.
Yeah. Well, it wants to overthink and figure it out and understand and know where it started and how is it happening and how can I heal it. And the truth is, your mind doesn't do the healing anyway.
Nope.
If anything, it just keeps bringing up the story, which recreates the pain. Yeah.
And that's why I do breath work, because breath work allows you to move the emotion without having to put a story to it. So you can move through that emotion, that natural process we just talked about. You can move through it without having to have any story. It just
so you don't even have to have the dialogue. You just breathe. Okay, so share that. Let's make that even quicker.
Yeah. So this is using the breath, and so I teach devotion to breath, because our breath is from my perspective and what I've been shown and what I embody, our breath is the manifestation of our life force. Yeah. Why wouldn't we use it? And a lot of us don't know how to breathe. A lot of us don't use our diaphragm properly. Oxygen isn't getting everywhere that it needs to get to, these type of things. So I support the encouragement of cultivating habits around using the breath and using it intuitively. using it to activate mind's eye, to be able to move energy. There's many like intentions. And so it's really cultivating what intention you want to use the breath for and applying that and exploring and being curious and being free of judgment, because the breath can really shake a lot of things up. It'll move the energy through, but that doesn't mean that energy is just going to go away automatically. Keep in mind, we're seated in competition and codependency. So it supports in being able to, clear and bring more clarity, bring more attunement to your reality, so you can experience what you're going through in your self-discovery from more of an energetic perspective, instead of attaching a story to it, identifying with it, having to feel the shame, the guilt, all those things, and staying stuck in it, right? Because no matter what, that's part of the human journey, is shame and guilt. Like, no matter what person, they're gonna have shame, guilt, these type of frequencies in their vibration. And so it's always just to the degree as to which they're demonstrating that. And what is the dominant frequency? And so really, like, getting tuned into your own energetic field and getting to know your own energy. Because so many of my clients are like Reiki practitioners or theta healers or these more mainstream blueprints of channels for healing. And they come to me because they're like, I'm so frazzled. I don't know how to handle the gifts that I have. I don't know how to handle the energy that is, coming in. I'm clearing my energy every day, but I still don't feel like I can focus, and I don't know what I want and what's my purpose. And I'm like, oh my God, like, you didn't learn your own energy field before you started like exploring an infinite possibility, which is chaos. Infinite. You have to know your own energy field if you're going to be sovereign in infinite possibility. So hence why our conditioning is seated in codependency, because we are literally learning the potential of being sovereign in infinite possibility.
Yeah. It's huge because everybody is like that. We're almost trained even in society to always put others first. If you take care of yourself, you're selfish. And so you're taught always to be worried about what's somebody else thinking, what are their needs, put them first, that we are not even able to feel our own energy, like you say. And it's so important. But again, maybe it's that guilt and shame again, that you need to overcome that guilt that I'm thinking for myself. And I took this. I mean, I have a friend who actually, for her, it was huge to find out that when she poured tea for somebody, that she should pour for herself first and not always for the other person. And that, she felt, was like the most selfish thing she could do, as if it makes any difference. Nobody's watching who's pouring the water in which cup first. I mean, does it matter? And conditioned from such a young age to say, always put other needs, other people. And again, how do they overcome that guilt? I really am with the breath work, because that is where it's yours. It's your breath. It's not somebody else's. It's going through your body. Yes, we share the breath, But it's going into your body. You can direct it. You get to have the ultimate say in where it goes and what you want to do with it and how long you keep it for.
And nobody can take it away from you.
No.
And here's the thing is if you're not doing it, you're dead. Like, like the breath is life.
Yeah.
It's our life force. So if you can start learning to build habits around, using the breath intentionally and actively. So I don't just teach intentional breath, meaning like, you do like a box breathing and things like that, and which is very, very beautiful. But I facilitate active breathing, which actually triggers the nervous system, because what we're doing is we're retraining our nervous system in its window of tolerance. Because when we are expanding, we're expanding into frequencies we haven't experienced yet consciously. And so the resistance comes from being unconscious and fearful, right? And having trauma and fearful of letting those frequencies actually, come in and be experienced through the body. And that's what actually, helps us expand, right? But we will resist it because of trauma, because of, different things that the nervous system blocks. And so breath work, as you use your breath, okay, what it does is it takes you out of your prefrontal cortex and it activates the emotional part of the brain, which has the amygdala and the different parts that, secrete like adrenaline and, cortisol and things like that. So things that activate the fight or flight, okay, in our nervous system, autonomic nervous system, right? We have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. And so I'm going deeper and deeper into like the science of it, like the physiological aspects of it. Well, basically what's going on is when we go into a space where we freeze, where we go into a trauma freeze, it's because we're either in hyper arousal or hypo arousal. Hyper arousal is when we are needing to control, right? We're gripping, like we start fighting, we start, getting anxious. Anxious is a big one when you're in hyper arousal. Hypo arousal at its extreme is like depression and degradation, and like you feel defeated, right? Hopeless, like those really, low frequencies. And so when when you're hypersensitive, you go into these spaces often, like, and sometimes when you're going through your awakening, you have habits to go into these spaces often. And this is what creates suffering. So what we do is we work with the breath and we flex that window of flexibility, of tolerance, so that you're meeting the edges, but you're not going full blown into trauma freezes.
That sounds like the ice bath with less pain.
That's a great way of putting it, because, right, the different things that are going to support the nervous system in its experience for expansion is highly effective in being human. Because if we are going to walk an embodied path, we're going to walk with trauma, because trauma lives in the body. So we have to change our relationship with trauma. And I was shown a long time ago, again, this is another download, that I have embodied, but there are 3 parts of unconscious energy. And those 3 parts are drama, trauma, and karma. And drama is unconscious energy that has no intention of becoming conscious.
That sounds narcissistic.
Yeah, it has. So I mean, you can tie it to narcissism, but man, can you tie it to a lot of other things too?
Oh,
You know,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like so much. Okay, and that's kind of like the surface of unconscious energy. And then as you start getting a little deeper, trauma is the next level of unconscious energy, and this is unconscious energy fearful of becoming conscious. And that lives in the body. And then you have karma. And karma is what teaches us to use our energy ethically. And what I mean by ethically is knowing your own energy. Knowing when you're energetically enabling. And that's a whole nother thing too. So this is why I teach energetic perspective, because so much has been shown to me about how we can recognize our patterns through understanding our own energy field and how we're using it.
Yeah. And you're spot on, because that is what is actually running the show.
Well, yeah, and so like the subconscious, right? Like a lot of influence out there is to, start digging into your patterns, start digging into your psyche, start figuring out the why, that sort of thing. And that is important. But instead of going digging, let it be revealed. Because the body is the most effortless way to be able to access the psyche.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You just have to ask. You'll get an image or a feeling or a memory. You don't have to go, like you say, go and try and figure it out. You just get out of your own way and allow.
But it is a process, and it does. It's a development. It's a developmental. It has a developmental aspect to it, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And so, yeah, but it's part. That's the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And you won't learn anything if somebody else does it for you.
No, so like breath work. Yeah, so like breath work, nobody can do breath work for you. No matter what.
No, and you've also got to want to do it.
Yeah, nobody can have the experience for you. And so, in what it does is it really cultivates your resiliency, right? And feeling safe in the body, because as you do active breathing, you are taking your body from its homeostatic state and moving it out of its homeostatic state. Well, on a physiological level, the body is designed to recognize that and want to move back into its homeostatic state. So using the breath to really meet those edges of what the body is experiencing on a physiological level is game changing, because you're like, whoa, my body can do that. And you actually have a visceral experience with it.
So when is the book coming out?
Like, I am serious. Like, it's moving kind of fast. I just talked to a publishing company, but I'm also interviewing a few others. So, and I'm doing market research right now. So, just so I can really understand where people are confused, so I can get clear, more intentional and clarity around what people need to hear. Because I can talk about this all the time, but the relatability factor, I want to connect with that. And so my intention is to connect with the relatability channel of what this book can really bring. I'll tell you what it's going to be called. It's going to be called The Ultimate Embodiment Guide. And so, yeah, very exciting stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm excited, but I'm moving through this process of where I'm being guided, and I'm not necessarily like, I don't know what the process is.
Have you heard of R.J. Spina?
RJ, say it again.
Spina. He wrote a book on self-healing.
Okay.
But what I find interesting is that he wrote this book and then he asked publisher after publisher and they all said no, no, no. And eventually somebody said, okay, I'll take it on, but you have to rewrite it. So he rewrote it. And then she said, look, it's not good enough. You have to rewrite it again. I think he rewrote it, I don't know how many times, maybe 30. He said, but in the process, he became so clear on how to say it in such a way that when he wrote the next book, he already knew the format almost, like what it is and how to phrase it and stuff. But he really puts people through the how to with the meditations and that. It just reminded me of that. It's almost like sometimes it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to get it out there and then refine it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I love that reminder and that reflection. This has been planted and like it's been seeded for a while now. And so right now what I'm doing is I'm like integrating the
yeah, you'll know when it's ready.
The essence of it. Yeah, the essence of it, because it's just a different process that
you'll know.
Yeah, allows it to allow it.
You'll have that now it's time moment.
It will. But I'm excited for it, and like I didn't even think we would talk about it here, but it's great that we are, and it just shows that it is really moving. It's building momentum.
You see.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Can people get hold of you if they want to do the course or connect or
learn
more?
Yeah, so Crystal Tiehen is my personal page. Crystalline Your Journey is my business page, and this is all on Facebook and Instagram. And then I also have a link tree that I can shoot over to you for in-person sessions if you're in the Kansas City area. Or I also do virtual as well. So, and I am stepping into a new modality. I'm being trained on it at the end of this month. It's called Aura Transformation, and it's an upgrade of your auric field. It is a spiritual technology, but I've been working with the auric fields for a better part of a decade, and I feel this is just like one of those like ways to ground it into, the capability that we have as humans when we give ourselves permission, to heal.
Awesome. Well, I'll post all of that in the description as well.
Okay.
And so that people can. Do you have a message that you'd like to share before we go?
A message. Ooh. Yeah, safety in the body. So here is my message. Before you start getting into any type of energy work, or before you start seeking, or if you're seeking now, ask yourself, do you know your own energy field? Can your body hold space and be a experiencer for what you're getting into? Or do you need to cultivate that safety in the body first, so that when you are exploring, you're not affected so harshly? by awakening to all this new awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so important. And that's what the breathwork would help them with, obviously, because that's how you connect. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yes,
I mean,
lovely.
I
Well,
think you know what it's like. It's like people that have a camera will say, I know how to take photos. And when you ask a photographer, it like took them 30 years and they still don't feel like they know anything. And I suppose it's the same with breathing. I mean, people say, I've been breathing my whole life. Why do I need to learn how to breathe? But you've got an instrument, you don't know what you're doing with it. You know, you've got so much more potential, and we're just kind of living on the surface of it. Yeah.
absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much for adding that. Yeah. So, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, likewise. Thank you for joining me and sharing your story. And yeah, I will look forward to maybe learning about your book, maybe getting your book. And when you do write it, you let me know and I'll put it on the website.
Oh, awesome. Okay. And if you'll shoot me the link, I'd love to share this with my audience as well.
Yeah, no, I will do. Yeah, I will do.
If we want to feel better, here's my final message I'll leave with. If we want to feel better, we have to become better feelers.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
And some of us are overfeeling, so learn to underfeel.
Right, and well, better feelers is learning what that, like,
So,
what is that discernment?
yeah.
Like, yeah,
I don't want
yeah.
to take away from what you said. What you said was right. It was spot on.
Well,
Crystal,
no
thank you so much.
worries. No, I love it. I love it. All right, cool. Well,
All right.
I appreciate it very much. It's been wonderful connecting with you.
Yeah, likewise. Have a good day.
Okay, you too, Natasha.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.